me. You're all good? All right. So the echo on that is bugging me a little bit. Yeah, I'll move it down. I'll just pin it to you. You're going to talk more than I am. So I think every year there's a talk or two about people that want to get into this field or people that want to move into a different part of this field. And I just wanted to jump on that bandwagon because I own my own company now, which is code for I'm just not a good team player. I think I told Mark that earlier. We're out there like, I just don't play well with other folks, and I have a problem with authority. So now if I get mad at my boss, I just go to the mirror and we have a little talk. And it's different. But I keep having these folks come up to me like, hey, do you do this, like break into places and then or test security? I'm like, yeah, I do that sometimes. Oh, I want to do that. I'm like, I don't know if you do, because it's not all. Like Steven was great, and by whoever scheduled me to go after Haywood, thanks for that. So I have to go after like a gifted teacher that's wonderful at what he does and way smarter than me, and so I really appreciate that. But that's sarcasm, by the way. I don't appreciate that. So I decided to put this together, and I'll start out real quick with, one of the things. So you asked what these red and blue cards were, right? So I start out with this thing of like, we think security's broken, right? In general, we all kind of think nobody knows what they're doing or whatever. We know what we're doing. But everybody outside my little sphere of normal right here doesn't, my kill zone. I shouldn't make jokes like that after what we just said, but she could take that off the thing. We think they don't know what they're doing, and I know what I'm doing. And we want to have people have visibility into their organization, right? But if I asked you, do you believe everything that you see, you would say no. But if I asked you if you'd sell me your eyes for $100 million, you wouldn't do it, right? Because we kind of do believe what we can see. And if I can set up a SIM and I can start monitoring logs, I believe I have some visibility into that, and I know what's going on. But these are kind of fun little things where if I hold these up to you and I ask you to look at it, which card looks bigger to you? The red one looks bigger, right? I mean, because it obviously is. But if I move them around just a little bit, now which one looks bigger? And just in case you thought maybe I was doing some kind of sleight of hand or something, I can just roll them over like that, and now which one looks bigger? And you see the difference. So this is just our eyes are lying to us, right? And what happens is your eye and your brain are comparing this long curve against this short curve. And so you can't always believe what you see, right? And so that may fool you. So this is just a fun little icebreaker I have. If you want some of these, they're up here. I will tell you that on the back, these are a gospel tract. So part of my identity is I love the Lord, and I believe He gave me the ability to be in this field. And so I don't make any bones about that. So if you want those, they're there for you. If you'll ask me questions and talk to me during this, I'll give you a sticker, okay? I'll be real honest, I'm going to give you a sticker anyway, because it helps me out. If you ask me a dumb question, though, you get the little one. So, Zach, do you want yours now, buddy? I'm just joking with you. I make fun of Zach a little bit, because I remember I gave a presentation, was it like 10 years ago now? Man, are you even that old, man? Yeah. So Zach came up to me after a presentation at Fountainhead, was it? On voice phishing, I think I did. And he's like all excited about, I want to get in this field. And I thought, man, this dude could do this, And now he's this great pen tester over at Sword and Shield, which is a great company in Knoxville. And so it's been real fun to watch Zach do that. And as I think more about, what do we actually do? There's a lot of different things that are an InfoSec practitioner. So how many people in here actually work in this field now? Those of you that I know, don't put your hand up. I know you. So that's been great. But is everybody having fun? I'm seeing like a lot of friends here that I haven't seen Zach for, I guess we ran into each other in Lowe's a few months ago. And then Mark and I have only crossed paths like once a couple of years ago at Sands, and never met Ronnie before. Eric, I know. So been fun. Saw a guy I used to work with at Toyota years ago sitting out here at the Qualis table. So sat down and hung out with him. So it's a totally fun place. And so how many people are working in this field right now? One, two, very few. How many people want to work in this field? Oh, shocker. Okay, that's my surprise face, because why else would you be here, right? So here's a little bit about me. So I own Cyphus Security. I've been doing this for 15 years. I have no certifications, okay? I've never been a QSA. I've never been a CISSP. So I can say that. I have had several certifications, SANS and stuff like that, but I just let them all expire because that's not for me. What I do nowadays is I do testing and more what I would call auditing these days of industrial control systems, IT, products. Sometimes vendors will send me a product and you take the product apart or you look at the firmware. So I would say I do a little bit of everything. And my deepest kind of technical thing that maybe I'm good at is probably forensics and incident response. I'm a real middle-of-the-road pen tester type of a guy. I've worked at ORNL. We kind of had a discussion about that. So just keep that to yourselves. It'd be great. Kidding. I worked at Internex, which is an electrical engineering firm, University of Tennessee. These are all people that realize they're better off without me, so which is great. And then my hobbies down at the bottom. And when I say security research, we'll talk about a little bit more later. I like to just try and learn a little bit more about this field, but I don't totally geek out on it anymore because I have 2 teenage daughters and I have an 8-year-old boy, and they're just way more fun than anything that's in any of these boxes these days. So I'm really enjoying being a husband and a father at this season of my life. And the real reason I started Cyphus was, it's true that I'm not a good team player, but I'm a biblical counselor, and so I spend half of my time working for money, and I spend the other half of my time doing counseling for folks. So, and that's what I wanted to do. I have slides, and I have things I want to share with you, but I'd rather interact with you and answer your questions and talk to you as we go. So all of this stuff will be kind of, up to you. So you can listen to me ramble on about what I've been doing for 15 years, which is fine, because some of it's goofy and weird and fun. Or we can talk about what it is that interests you in this field. So feel free to just interject as I go. I'm real comfortable with that. Nothing bugs me, so Zach, jump in whenever you want and be all great. Actually, I'm going to lean on Zach a little bit because I know him, and probably Mark and Ronnie because they have some experience in this field, and Eric back there, to affirm what I'm saying. And so the guys that are practitioners in the room, would you raise your hand again real quick? I want you all who want to be in the field to look around and engage with these people. This is your biggest asset at these conferences, is making relationships with folks like this that have been doing this for a long time, because they can mentor you and guide you and correct you in this field. When you come in, guns like, I'm going to be a hacker. Yeah, okay, you're not today. Okay, and what I need you to learn some other things first. And then when you become a good pen tester, I might need you to learn some other things to go beyond being a pen tester or being a security researcher. Because what I want these days is I want someone who's real well-rounded, is what I would call it. But I think Mark and I were talking about that earlier. Sometimes that's a little harder to find these days. And you hear the news all the time, people talking about there's an Infosec talent shortage, right? And I don't know that I agree with that because there's a lot of smart people here. I mean, Travis Goodspeed is from Knoxville, and he's sitting right out there. And if you don't know who that is, find out who he is. I promise he's the smartest guy here. And if you're not afraid after you meet him, something's not working up here, okay? Because anything. Dude, that guy, I mean, your phone should be off. I mean, Travis is around. Travis is the best. He'll be keynoting BSides Knoxville, which I don't know when that is yet. I don't know when the date is, but you may know? 11th. Okay, so they'll have a website. There's some disparity here. So this is what I hear all the time, right? And I'm not going to pretend I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I had a friend that's a graphic designer make my slides, so because my slides are boring. And so he said, hey, can I play with these? I said, have at it. So all the time I hear this, right? I want to do this. And oh, it looks so cool. And I just think like, yeah, I love what I do. And it is kind of cool. But I don't think it's what I thought it was when I got into it. Anybody that's a practitioner now want to share like what your first job was, IT job, Ronnie?
Manually going through firewall logs.
Okay, log monkey.
There was no aggregation.
Set and awk, right?
It was opening up .log for that day's timestamp.
So he was doing data correlation, looking for patterns. See, is there an incident here? So okay.
No, you're reading the log.
Anybody else? First IT job? Help desk. How long did you do that?
2 years.
It was awesome, right? Okay, so all the practitioners are like, it sucked. Okay. So there's a perception of different things. So one of the groups I subcontract to is called Precinct2 Group. They're a group of ex-Navy SEALs, and they do some. When you say you want them to red team something, that means something different in their head. Okay, but sometimes there's a cybersecurity component, and I'm allowed to do that dork part. But then this is actually one of the operators that does that. And sometimes people think this is what we're going to do, right? I'm awesome, and I'm going to go do, and you're not, but really, you're kind of like, all right, just FYI, this is you, okay, right here. This is me. This is us, all right? This is our people, okay? We're dorks, and it's okay. You're allowed to be that way, right? We're not, I'm Batman. yeah, looking like that, okay? It's, or, yeah, I'm going to go out and, life sometimes looks a little different depending on your perspective, right? And, huh?
This should be the whole talk.
Isn't this fun? And my buddy put all these in here. I've actually never seen these pictures till just now. But I just said I need some perception versus reality pictures, and he said, okay. Mine was, huh?
Can we get a hat?
Mark, you can get a hat like that, buddy.
I want to be friends with that guy.
Huh? He probably needs some friends. That's bold, though, right? I went down and ate lunch down at the Cherry Blossom Festival downtown. Do anybody know that's going on? So that's like somebody correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know anything about it. It's like a celebration of Japanese culture-ish, except it's a little weird because there's no cherry blossoms here, and there was an extreme lack of Japanese people. But there was a lot of Caucasian people that wanted to act Japanese. And so they were out there and they were doing like these choreographed dances, and it just came off as like, it was just a little weird. And this guy was down there, So, and I don't want to clear up something about like what you're not in this field, okay? There's all these, I got hired when I got hired at the lab, they said, we want to hire people like you because you're a rock star. And I believed that, okay? Which is part of the reason I got fired. My head started getting so big it wouldn't go through doors. And I thought, I'm really good at what I do. And then I realized I'm actually just a dork like everybody else. I'm not a ninja. This CEH thing, if you just Google CEH and click images, that's the first one. Or it was when I did it. So I loved that. And like, I'm just going to be, if you couldn't pick up chicks without an Infosec certification, or dudes, I see there's some ladies here, you're not going to with them, okay? It doesn't really give you that much street credit. So as I go through this, though, here's what I do, okay? I dig ditches for people. And I'll tell you now, I work hard, and I love it. But it's not always super fun, okay? This little thing here was like a little meme that went around, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know how many people have seen this, but it said we might have to lay off Andre, And I don't know if you can read this, like program development manager, PR, IT, security manager, there's all these managers. And has anybody worked in a structure like this? Every practitioner should raise their hand. Because you're going to work somewhere. How many people are a blue teamer in here? So when I say blue teamer, you work for an enterprise that you're tasked to defend it. That was your first gig, right? Any blue teamers in here that work to do that? Okay. So you are going to work for someone that does not understand you or at all what you do. And their title might be security manager, okay? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. They may be real good at managing personnel and weird personalities like mine and yours and things like that. But that's going to happen. And you are, at the earlier stage of your career, certainly this person digging the ditches. I'm sure it felt like that for you, Ronnie, when you were going through the log. The help desk certainly feels like this, right?
It's even worse in big organizations like the military or government, because it's so much more brain overhead.
The multiple layers of management, right? And I want to expound on that in a little bit as I continue to go through this. And we'll talk more about that, because I'll show you some real examples of situations I've been in where I had this kind of overhead. And I just couldn't stand it. And I thought, man, I would rather go work at Lowe's today than do this. Or I wonder if Best Buy is hiring, because Geek Squad sounds fun, and maybe I get a discount on a TV. And I like to watch TV. But there are things that we all do. And if the practitioners in the room or anybody else, if you want to add to this list, just throw it out here. This was, as I sat around and did this, and so I put sharpen the saw up there. Anybody read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Okay, so I'm not a huge Covey fan, but he's got some good advice in there. And if you're not going to sharpen your saw, a guy asked me yesterday, I'm kind of mentoring a guy in a pen test right now, and he said, how do I set myself apart in this industry so that people will want to work with me? Or some people want the fame that comes with this, which is not real, by the way. We'll go back to that not a rock star thing. That's not real. But I said, these are the things where you need to set yourself apart from your peers. These are the things that I look for. So I'm a prospective employer for anybody who wants to be in this field, okay? And when I interview people, I think I had a team of 6 6, 7, 8 or 9 people at the last job where I worked. One of the guys that Zach works with now was one of the hires I made there, and he is exceptional. You know, I found a guy that was like, oh, this dude's legit, you know. And you know where I got him from? Somebody take a guess, not you. Lowe's? Who said Lowe's? I was like, no, it wasn't. That's awesome. I got him off a help desk. Okay? He was at a help desk, and people were, I asked a few folks about him, like, he's got kind of a crappy attitude. I'm like, okay. Tell me, is he good? Does he, his tickets, you know, they get resolved? Oh, he solves the problem. And is the in person happy with him? Yes. His bosses, you know, sometimes there's a little friction. And I'm like, well, I come from the military. That dude was in the military, and I can handle that, okay? So like I've hired a couple of guys that were ex-Marines, for example. Well, there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. So they were Marines. And we would put them with like this guy to manage them, who, actually, I could relate this real close to Zach if I wanted to, because this is from somewhere in his past. But and this guy like, man, I can't handle this guy, you know. And I'm like, well, I can manage that because I'm used to that, you know. And for other people, that's just like, oh, you know, there's talk about guns, and he's real in my face, and it's a little scary. And yeah, but you know, but did he get the work done? He did. This guy was an exceptional system administrator. The guy that works with Zach now was good help desk technician and loved security research. And so I knew, and he could scripting. I think scripting was a real strong suit of his. And so with those things, I knew we can turn this guy into what we need, and we'll work on some of these other things. So the 4 or 5 practitioners in the room, how much do you write? How many people love writing? Do you have any authors in the room? You love to write. Can I ask what you like to write? Essays? Okay, what do you like to write?
Articles about photography and
Okay, so, whoa. What? You should come down here. And in the back?
I write news articles.
Okay, so one time I was on this gig one time, and I had this person say, oh, I'm an English major. Do I walk out of frame when I do that? Okay. And I said, oh, this will be great, huh? No, that's actually fine by me. I'll stay over here. So I like this student better anyway. He asked me what the cards were. And this person said, well, I have a degree in English, and I'll help you guys write this stuff. And we were writing some standards, which we'll talk about standards development here in a minute. And everything we gave to that person, I ended up as junk. We couldn't use it. And there was a huge difference in the essay style of writing, for example, which is beautiful. I think prose is beautiful. I love to read. I've got, you know, I carry around I'm going to tear that up. You know, I carry around books. I love to read. So I like to read non-technical stuff. But when you're writing a cryptography article versus an essay, sometimes there's a stylistic difference there. And the amount of writing. So how much do you guys write? Like define all the time. If you had a week long, 2 to 3. More than I like. So.
I used to like writing a whole lot. Yeah.
Eric.
When you have to do it, it just sucks the joy. But that's the same.
Well, and when you're not writing, you're editing or critiquing some other. It seems to be right. So.
From what I've heard talking to professors is that the more stuff, they don't want to find stuff wrong with the network, because the more stuff they find wrong with the network, the more stuff that they'll have to document. Like, you're like, I've read a paper before the line.
Oh, so let me describe my mentality, and then we'll see what these other 4 or 5 folks say. So when I get my gear in here, which I brought that for you as well, so you can kind of see what's in my kits. When that stuff boots up and I start going and Callie opens up like Steven had in here a minute, something happens to me and suddenly it's Thursday. And I don't know what happened, okay? And I'm like, oh, man, I'm tired and I've only had Monster Energy drinks for 4 days and I haven't had a shower. So I would like to think that I was smart enough to avoid finding stuff out for my laziness, but for whatever reason, I think some of us have this we start to latch on to that looked like, and I bet I could move here. And then we start, I got to Google that because I can't remember how to run that. So I'm never able to, my laziness never gets in the way. You guys?
No, what happens is that you get down rabbit holes that aren't really important grand context things. You know, where it has no
Good point.
impact whatsoever, but I have to exploit this backup data server because it's pissing me off.
Right. Oh, let's talk about time management real quick. So blue teamers, not as big a deal, okay? Time is free, essentially, especially, anybody work for the government? Was that yes? You're saying yes? No? So you have free time. Red teamers, what does time, your time is, you're billed out at a rate, right? And I don't know what your rate is. Somebody throw out, I mean, what does a pen test cost, a week-long pen test? Somebody throw a number out.
How many people?
One guy. Just to tell one guy, what would you charge for a 1-week internal pen test? Take a guess.
Pen tester I talked to said something like $40,000 to $50,000.
For 1 week? No, those people don't get hired. So if you were charging $150 an hour by yourself, that would be $6,000. It'd be $8,000 at $200 an hour. So that's what you have to think of, right? Some of this time is reserved, and if you own your own company, then I know that I start losing money if I'm not done in that time frame, right? So I hired, for example, at my last job, I hired a guy that was brilliant, security researcher, came out of the government. He had actually retired from the government, and I said, here's my only concern, is that I think the pace here might be difficult for you. And he said, no, I can do it. And this gentleman was actually about 20 years older than me. And I said, okay. So we brought him on. Super smart guy. He could code in any language. Brilliant. He could do cryptography in his head. I mean, this guy was smart. He said, hey, you have 1 week to do this job here. He said, this would take 4 months. I said, you have 40 hours. Be done. You know, you're going to be done in 40 hours. And we got to the 32-hour mark, and I stepped in and I said, where are you on this? And he said, right here. I said, give it to me. It's got to be done tomorrow. And that's just the way it is. You guys agree with that? I mean, and they will come to you, your boss will come to you that doesn't know what you do and be like, you're done. And you don't have a recourse there. You either have a different job or you be done. And you be done well. And it must look good. So that brings me to the workforce development thing. Hiring difficulties for any of you guys where you are? You have difficulty hiring people?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're always hiring for that. You know?
Always hiring. Ugh. You guys, staffing's always a concern. And so these two guys are at the same company, so I know they agree. And I used to work there as well. Pretty much everybody here, does everybody go through Sword and Shield at one point? Great company. You should, if you're interested in this as a career, they're a great company. They're in Knoxville. And Red Tiger's great too. So Mark works for Red Tiger. They're a fantastic group. Who are you with now, Ronnie?
I'll back the block you.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I'm a little nervous now. I got my wallet still. All right. So workforce development, what you're looking for there is I want you to be mentoring someone in this field at some point. I want you to find a mentor if you need one. These people here, like I said earlier, are your greatest asset as you come to these things. You're going to make connections here that will really help you move forward. And this field can really be a lot more about who you know than what you know sometimes. Because the technical things, I mean, Zach and Ronnie and Mark and Eric and these folks, they can show you how to run Nmap the way Stephen was doing it earlier. We can show you that. There is a little bit of an art to penetration testing or being a blue teamer. The ability to see what's not readily apparent in front of you. Like I did that little optical illusion for you. Sometimes, and I'll show you a real example of this in a minute, you can run Nmap and you can run Nessus and you can get domain admin without ever finding anything in that. And it's just, that's where I want you to have some help desk experience. I want you to have looked through logs. I want you to know that anytime you type net space users space / domain and you're authenticated to a domain server, it will likely dump all the users. And then you can see everybody's username. And you're having fun now. And now you start asking it, who are your domain admins? And most domain controllers answer these questions. Funny thing, so recently there was a thing about a former Secretary of State and email, you know. And I'm not going to talk about the ethics of that. I'm going to talk about the security function of that. I immediately queried, you know, I can't help myself, so I asked the SMTP server, hey, what accounts are on you? And it says, you know, all these. And my favorite one was Big Dog Willie C at thatdomain.com. And I'm waiting to publish that blog post because I want that to kind of die down because you never know how sensitive that might be with whoever it is. But those are just things you can do, right? And I want you to know, speak a little SMTP. It'll take you a long way. Know how a domain controller works. It'll help you out. Anybody ever written a hardening guide? Okay, what's a hardening guide? Somebody throws
Config manual.
config manual for like a Windows platform, Mac OS 10 like Stephen had up here. You need to set those up for your environment so that it's safer, right? Turn off unnecessary services like he said. Does RDP need to be open on every machine in your environment? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know what you do. Where can you get hardening guides? How hard is that to write?
Copy and paste from the node.
Center for Internet Security.org. You can download them, customize them to your environment. You can actually use, I think, Tenable Security Center, where you can actually upload a template, scan your environment, and it'll say what the delta is. And you'll be able to do that. But some people do this. So I put on Twitter, hey, what do you want some of these people to know about? And they said, I want some of these people to know that not all of us get to go out and hack stuff and break things, and it's all fun. Some of us sit and we write hardening guides. And that's valuable to an organization. That reduces risk. And I hate to use upper management words, but we're going to talk about that in a minute because that's important. I've gone from, as I was actually picking out what I was going to wear here, I had jeans and a t-shirt picked out, and I was going to do that, but that's not what I look like at work anymore. This would be as casual as I get, unless I'm in a substation. And then I'm jeans, steel-toed, hard hat, but I'm typically in front of upper-level management these days. And we have to learn how to translate what you found to what they want to fix. Because I'll give you a specific example later of a vulnerability that was found that nobody in the room knew what it meant, but they knew they had to fix it. And so you had to translate what that was. Standards review and development. Anybody, you guys ever been on a standards board? I know you have, Mark. Ronnie, you have. You guys may not have. Sword and Shield doesn't really play in that sometimes, and good for you guys, because that can suck the life out of you too. So what groups have you guys done that with?
It's hard for interoperability.
Okay, SGIP.
That was awful.
But good work still.
Well,
Hard team to play with, I think.
It was. They also come on privacy.
ICS JWG is you?
Yeah. ISA primarily, but when I misspent youth in the chem sector, we didn't write standards, but we generated a lot of guidelines.
Right.
And the difference is how prescriptive you get or what the standards of the organization are. A lot of times you develop a lot of material that for like members of the trade organization, but they're not prescriptive. And guidance is the best you can get. You
Right.
can't say it must do this. You say you should do this. But there's still a
So-
lot of need.
So he's talking about, and we'll talk a little bit, I want to go through that in detail when we talk about the difference between regulation standards and guidelines in a little bit. And you're going to need to know that in your career, and you're going to need to know that whether you're red team or blue team, okay? Whether you're a consultant or you're looking at firewall logs. This will come into play at some point in your career, and it may make your eyes fall out of your head, okay? It's like reading Lamentations or something, okay? That can be a downer, all right? But this is necessary to further, everybody's heard this, we should be proactive and not react. This is how you do that. Develop a standard. I was in a group called Limnos, which I'll show you later, which is now actually turning into an IEEE standard. What we wanted to do, how many people know what SSH is? Okay, how many RFCs, everybody knows what an RFC is? Okay, how many RFCs are there for SSH? Okay, over 20, all right? There's over 20 RFCs for SSH. How many people have heard we should implement best practices? Tell me what a best practice is. That was a perfect answer, right there. Like what we're doing is the best practice, right? So a group of us in Limnos, and we were a group of people from TVA, Schweitzer Engineering, Idaho National Lab, Sandia National Lab, a bunch of consultant, we're the vampires in there, sucking the money out of the project. We decided, let's write a best practice. This is how you should implement SSH. These are the cryptographic ciphers you should allow. These are ones you should explicitly not allow in your SSH daemon. Did you know you can implement SSH insecurely? You can. And so we wanted to make sure there was a best practice. It's being turned into an IEEE standard now. So we made a guideline, and now we're going to turn it into a standard. And then whether it becomes regulatory later through FERC or NERC, we'll see. But we're going to do it. And it was actually incredibly painful. It has been 6 years in the making probably at this point. I think Limnos project, were you part of that at one point? Either of you guys? So it's been going on for at least 4 years, and it takes about 18 months to turn an idea into a IEEE standard. So that's the standard rate. So, and we're going to do it for SSH, we're going to do it for X509, LDAP, and syslog, because we thought you should actually have a best practice for that. So if you're going to run syslog in your environment, we think you should capture at least these fields. And we think you shouldn't waste your time with these. And we're a group of diverse industry experts, rock stars, whatever you want to call us, and so we'll write it.
And the reason why standards are important is, I mean, think about how long we had to live with web on wireless before everything became WPA standard. It was because of the standards body had to go through.
Ronnie said had to, like it's not around now.
Well, but you know what I'm saying, though. It's like, I go buy a router off the shelf now. It's going to have WPA on it.
Right.
It used to not be this way. And it was because standards had to be written that takes time.
Who's SSID in here, by the way, as it hurts when IP? Yeah, that's funny. All right. Witty people. Security monitoring. So this is what Ronnie did at that 1 gig, which now they call data analytics, or they used to call data analytics, and now big data, I think. It's just all the same thing, right? We just rebrand that so we can sell you a different service or product later. And then correlating that. So that's what he was talking about doing. Please get a job doing that at some point. I want you to know what a log looks like. I want you to be able to go through it and look at it. The tools that are available now, when I was a boy, I had to walk 5 miles to school, uphill both ways with no shoes on in the snow. So you guys have it better. Take advantage of that. The tools we have are wonderful. I think Stephen hit on that in the last talk. Use the tools that are available to you. I spend a lot of money on hardware. I'll show you some of that stuff in a minute. But software, I only buy a few things. I buy Burp Suite Pro. I buy Nessus. And I own one other piece of software. I can't remember what it is right now. But that's everything else I use is pretty much free. Everything I use for forensics is free. I buy the hardware for that. And these last two things are kind of, as you start to move upward in your career a little bit, this is where I really need you to translate and be able to talk to an executive or tell them, you just went and did a pen test, right? You busted everything open, you got domain admin, you hand somebody a report, they love it, and then they look at you and say, well, Zach, what do I do with this now? And you need to be able to say, what would it take to build you a cybersecurity program, an information security program? Because we have built things for a long time, and this is our fault. And when I say our fault, I mean the Infosec community, we did this wrong for years. And we're going to have to correct this in the near term. So what we did is we said there should be a CIO and there should be a CISO, right? And the CIO, this person is focused on providing services and delivery and making sure the content is available to our consumers. And the CSO was responsible for making sure that was done somehow securely. The CSO never really materialized into a real upper C-level position. And it's my opinion now that those two positions should not be different. If security isn't part of, so you have application developers somewhere, you have an IT help desk, you have a networking group, and then you shouldn't have a security group. Security should be part of all of those groups with some oversight reporting up to a senior leader like a CIO who has that as, keeping this data secure, depending on what it is what we're about here. Because, let's face it, if you break into my website, for example, Cyphus.com, who cares? There's nothing there. There's an incident response kit you can download for free. There's an incident response plan template you can download, and that's it. There's nothing there. If you are TVA and you break in there, what do you have access to?
Employee records.
Employee records. What else? There we go. Yeah. So, dude, come on, you play in this field. So 3 of us in the room play in the control systems world a lot, and we know, man. Here's my favorite quote from last year. I was at a big IOU, and I said, tell me how this is built. He did the Visio thing for me. I said, tell me why these are touching. He said, I need you to think of that as an air gap. See? You're good people. I didn't even have to explain that to you. Thanks. So let's look at some of this. Let me show you some of the other stuff we do. This was my home. I had to get rid of this thing. This was my Dell PowerEdge 2950. So I work at home. So ironically, I don't know if any of you know this, if you use one of these in a data center, it's like not a big deal. But if you plug it in like your bedroom, it sounds like an airplane. So it's gone now. I have to find some other way to do this. But this was my home lab, okay? And so $400 here. For this, it had 32 gigs of RAM, 3.5 terabytes of RAID 5. You can buy these all day long on Craigslist for $200 to $400, okay? ESXi is free. This is an ESXi 5.5 environment. Free. This can cost you 50 grand, but they gave it to me free, okay? This is a great home penetration testing lab. I don't take any credit for it. This is how I set it up. I Googled penetration testing lab. They said, this is what you should set up. I did it. And so I can practice web app penetration testing, Metasploitables right here, versions 1 and 2. I actually have both of them. All kinds of stuff. This is a great, if you want these, my email address will be up here later. I'll send you the slides if you want them. But I need you to be practicing your craft. And I need you to be good at it if this is what you want to do. If you're a blue teamer, you would still want to do this and replicate some of the services you run in this. Operations environments, I think we see the lack of a lab a lot of times, a sandbox. So they come in and say, hey, will you test this? And you're like, well, I can't really. And if I flip that switch right there, that's a recloser. We don't really want that to happen here. So do you have a sandbox we can do this in? No. We would like you to build that because I really don't want the lights to go out right here. Which affects things. So we do things like this. So how many of you guys that are practitioners have a home lab and geek out a little bit? Yeah. This is, if you don't have one, get one. I don't have one right now. I'm changing that out. Like I said, I don't really know where to go from here. It's hard to find a silent server, but I'll figure something out.
You have a basement DT now.
I don't have a basement. I have a 2-story house. I'm selling a house. Anybody want to buy a house? Got a pool. I want to move, okay? I want to move. Okay, I told you earlier about dealing with a project that maybe wasn't the best. Is there a laser pointer down here anywhere? I don't need it. So this was a job when we got hired to, a friend of mine and I, they said, we want you to write this security write-up for us. Call it whatever you want. A standard. We said, okay. This was the person asking for it at company A. And they went to their manager and said, hey, I think we should go to an outside third party and we should get this written. So they throw an RFP on the streets. If you don't know what an RFP is, bless your heart. Don't ever look it up. So they hired this contractor. So they went to this contractor and said, hey, can you do this for us? And the dude said, yeah, we do that. Experts. We're the best. The guy doesn't do that at all. So he hired our company. And 2 of my VPs began to negotiate, we do that. Yeah, we have 8 guys that can do that, or whatever they said. Promise the moon, right? Over-promise and under-deliver. That's what executives do. You gotta learn to do it the other way around. And they went to this person, who was kind of a project manager, and said, oh yeah, we can do this. And then my boss and myself were creating the content, okay? They finally came to us and said, can you guys do this? We said, oh, yeah, I can do that. That would take like, a month. And they said, okay, you have like 2 days. And we were like, who negotiated this? And of course, these 3 people and that person negotiated it. And you were never allowed to talk to this person, okay? So your job here, so not from the practitioners, from the people that want to work in this field, who are you trying to please at this point? Somebody give me an answer. Your manager? Oh, right. Excellent answer. So there's a belief that you're always trying to serve your customer and your audience, right? And that's true. You should be trying to serve them. But at this moment, this person is paying this person. Okay? So I'm actually trying to please that contractor up there. And that was extremely difficult. And for 4 months, we argued about it. And we couldn't deliver the right thing, and we finally decided not to do it. And did we know what to deliver and how to do it to please these people? We did. I could not actually please this person and those 2 people over there. So it didn't work. And this is just going to happen, okay? This is just part of life. I didn't quit my job. I didn't hate any of those people. This is just the way it is. You're going to. Any of the practitioners been through a situation like that? A little difficult, hard to walk through? Who's had the bad client experience, right? I'm self-employed now, so when that happens, I quit. I had somebody call me the other day say, I want you to take this forensics case. This is about a year ago, actually. I said, okay, well, why don't you tell me what's going on? And so we signed an NDA, and they said, well, dude created some, it's alleged that the guy created some Facebook pages and made friends with, 8 young ladies and got them to send pictures to him. And I said, oh, okay, And they said, well, he didn't do it. Everybody in prison's innocent, by the way. I said, okay, let me take a look at some of the stuff. And they said, so they started showing me some of the evidence that the police were going to show against him. And I started looking at this one thing. And police forensics is a little bit just okay. They're typically just running a tool. They're not real good at it. They're getting better. But I looked at this one piece. I said, I think this is an image. And so what they wanted to know, they saw me do a demo one place where I had somebody with an Android phone scan a QR code, and then I had complete control of their phone, and I was goofing around with it. And so they knew I could break into a phone. They said, we want you to prove that someone could have broken into his phone and done this via his IP address, right? I said, well, that's possible. It could be done. It's not likely. And then I said, well, this image looks like it's rendered on the phone, and like no hacker would do that. That's what happens in the movies. And in real life, we just look at like command lines, and then we backhaul stuff to our workstation. We would render it there if it was an image we were after. I said, so, and then this person started calling me on like Saturday mornings, and my baby's in jail, and I want him out, and like, I quit. I'm not going to work for you. Because A, I think he did it, and B, you call too much. So you can't do that if you work for someone else. You just like, hey, boss, I think we should get rid of them. And they say, it's revenue. You need to be articulate things like this. You're going to go in somewhere, and they're going to say, we need to eliminate the threats from our environment. And you have to not laugh at them and say, man, I hope you don't have any threats in your environment. Because that's an agent, okay? That's a verb. That's an actor that is in there that wants to do harm. And what you want to get rid of is your vulnerabilities, right? And then now a lot of executives want to talk about this, right? I should have added another thing down here for the forensic thing of attribution. Like, this is how you waste time, motivation and attribution. Well, why would somebody want to do that to us? Well, why did the chicken cross the road? It's just there, I mean, I see the thing about the Secretary of State's email server. I immediately, I got to see how that works. We just do that, right? That's our people. That's what we do. So this just comes off the table. But you're going to need to be able to talk about these things, right? Know the difference. Talk to them about that. What is a threat? Are you concerned about threats? What difference does it make if we figure out, pick a recent hack. What, Sony? Who broke into Sony? Huh? Who cares, right? Who cares? What are you going to do if it is North Korea? Sanction them? We don't have economic trade with them. What did you just do? Nothing. What do you actually want to fix? That, right? What's the vulnerability that you need to mitigate? Is it a patch? It's probably a process or a person, actually, these days. It's not really probably a technology anymore. But that's what you have to focus on. But everybody wants to talk about, man, we need to figure out who did this, and then, well, what are you going to do? I think in the near future, there will be tactical action taken on things like that. That will change. This whole idea of cyber warfare will escalate into somebody will do something logically that will translate into a physical action. That will happen in the future. It's not happening now, and that's why attribution sometimes doesn't matter that much. I need to be able to articulate something like this. So I just went to a client. I said, have you looked at this system over here? They said, well, we're a risk-based organization. So what we do is we only do vulnerability assessments and penetration tests on things that we've deemed to be high risk. And I said, well, interesting. How do you know what the risk is? Because I put together low-level findings all the time. And if I can find 4 low-level things, I'm usually winning, okay? So you need to be able to articulate to them, well, my understanding would be that what we want to actually do, and this is just 2 different ways to visualize it. I made this one up in the upper left hand. I downloaded this one off the internet, but Googled risk and images. Okay, I thought it was good. The vulnerability and the threat, right? Who wants to do it? How are they going to do it? Do you have a countermeasure for it? And then the big thing is, you, as an outside consultant, don't know this, the impact. Your client would know that. You, as the blue teamer, should know the impact. I call that a failure scenario. Okay, if I can get into one PC in your organization, how bad is that? I need you to quantify that. I can't do that as an external person. And then we know how bad it would be. How much time did you lose? How much revenue did you lose? So if you're electric utility, the only way you lose revenue is if you're actually not providing your service, right? Your customers don't actually go somewhere else. They're not going. But if you're a wealth management company, you get broken into, you don't have any customers, right? They leave.
So I see the probability and impact, and I can see, but I don't exactly understand what the threat quantifies. Because, I mean, like, what does threat mean?
Right, and that's why it has to be like a threat and vulnerability combination. So, so my example is not good. Thank you for pointing that out. We like to focus on this here. Like, let's find out what the exposure is, and then who would actually want to take advantage of that. Which again, threat is less important. But I don't know an organization yet that's willing to drop the threat from anything.
Threats can be non-person too. So it's like, well, our building isn't hardened against tornadoes, but we don't live in a high probability tornado area. So it would still factor in for consistency.
Right. So what is going to do the damage can still, even if it's not an actor, a person. So he would say a tornado, tidal waves, environment, equipment failure is a threat. I mean, if it just quits working, you're in trouble, right? You don't have backups, or business continuity plan. So does that answer that?
Well, in my mind, I just think it would be probability.
Yeah, and actually probability is not the best one up there either, because, okay, hackers in the room, what's the likelihood that the hacker will take advantage of the exposed vulnerability? 100%, right? It's almost binary to us. It's either they can't or they will. You know, that's how we look at it nowadays, pretty much. I like this one a lot better, because you do want to consider, you know, how is it going to happen? Is it going to be an insider? Because if it's only your employees, you can do better things there and really monitor that. If it's exposed to the world, you're in trouble. You know, so it's that kind of thing. Going back to the standards thing, so for those of us that play in the electrical world, somebody came to us at one point and they said, we want you to go through and look at how all the standards, guidelines, and regulations impact us as a utility. And we foolishly said, okay. And this was a small sample of things that impact an electric utility or a vendor in an electric utility space. And I would say this is probably 2/3 of them that we could come up with. We knew that we'd reached our threshold for not having our ears bleed at this point. So we started looking through this and noticed that even within IEEE, there's multiple societies. There's more than 43 now. And are you IEEE member? Anybody? No, me neither. I don't join groups much. So we looked at this, and they wanted us to turn this into, you know, how does this work for us? And so we showed them, well, this is what it would look like for you, okay? We're going to break it down into state, federal, and private things. So most people don't actually know NERC is a private entity, which is weirdness in and of itself. But, you know, and we went from kind of, so this is what Mark was talking about earlier, knowing the difference between regulation, standards, requirements, and guidelines. I would say most of us are going to 90% play in the guideline and standard field. We're not really, I'm not in regulatory or making requirements for people most of the time. I don't know if you guys would be different than that. But what we also found was that, okay, so state commissions, we won't go into what that is, but a PUC from a state, that's a law. They're going to tell you, you must do this, okay? And you're beholden to us for that. And those people are, I think, all lawyers in most places, right? Sometimes there's a double E that's part of the group. I think in California, actually, Wendy, she's a double E, and she's part of the PUC. But most of them are lawyers. And what we found was that you went from like least prescriptive to most prescriptive down here. So I think I was part of this group, NESCOR, Limnos. You were SGIP. I don't have ICS-JWG up here, but they would have fit down in here as well. ASAP SG. We were developing very tactical things, like flip this bit in here to make this more secure. So these were much more, and you can see that they would fall down into the guidelines area. You might want to think about doing this. But what we regulate is actually much more high level. Why is that?
Not everything applies to
Every environment is different, right? You do not want the government to say, you should do everything just like this. That would be not fun at all.
ICS-JWG is just a collaboration. It doesn't, I mean, they publish like a roadmap of roadmaps, and they publish industry stuff, but it's certainly not standards. It's not, it's, you know, kind of like this is where you ought to start thinking.
You could fit down here, though, right?
It's not even best practice.
The reason I like ICS-JWG is
Yes, that's the best practice. It's a recommended practice.
DHS? Yeah. So they're an interesting group, and they're kind of figuring out who they are, and they're new, so give them time.
When I say DHS, I'm thinking more about the control systems.
Yeah. INL? You're thinking about INL?
INL is an NDOE, so it's really confusing. You kind of scorecard people.
So yeah, it's kind of, anyway, that's a fun, if you want to know more about those people, but I throw ICS JWG into this mainly because I love the people that are involved in it. And I think they're wanting to do the right thing and they're doing it at the right pace, certainly. Where some of these other things are like, hey, let's just throw out this. And let's talk about throwing some things out there. So I'm at this place. We got about 10 minutes left, but they send this to their third-party vendors. And they say, what version of Ike do you want to use for your IPsec VPN? Is that a problem? Who knows what Ike is? Internet Key Exchange. Version 1 is broken, okay? It does not work right. It does not properly encrypt an IPsec tunnel. So we asked the network engineer, are you aware of this? So this is what you would call like a tabletop walkthrough kind of a thing. The network engineer says yes. The managerial person at the table says, what is Ike? And I said, so this is where we're going to have a delta between a technical person and being able to talk to an executive, right? This is why I brought this up here. Okay, so if there's a problem with Ike v1 and you negotiate that with people that you're going to allow into your environment, what fixes that issue? What's the simple answer there? It is as simple as it sounds. You just use v2, right? Which is not a big deal if you're a small organization. If you have like one connection, who cares? You just disallow version 1, and it's not a big deal. Yeah? Difference. So the difference in what you thought was there and what's actually there. So a tabletop walkthrough, you would, for example, you would go in somewhere and you would say, what's your incident response process? You would ask the person that wrote it, and they would say, okay, when this happens, then this person calls this number, and then they do this. And then to determine the delta, or the difference, you go over and you say, okay, they would call what number? And so you pick up the phone, you call that number, and you say, hey, this happened. What are you going to do? And then they say, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, these people don't know what your incident response plan is. So it would be like that. Good question. If you have 1,000 connections, these people had about 4,000 coming into their environment, you can't just disable Ike v1, right? Now, this is where you've found a vulnerability, and this C-level person's looking at you, and they're going to say, Mark, what do I do with this? How do I fix this problem? And I want to run out of the room screaming, like, I don't want to be responsible for this in this place, because you guys are a multi-billion-dollar organization. But what we did was abstract it up into something that the executive would understand. Okay, we created a major project called network security, and we wanted them to implement. We counted up how many high, medium, and low risks after working with them to determine the impact of the vulnerability in each of these things. So we created these as mitigations right here. We made these categories for them. So getting rid of Ike v1 would be establishing enterprise access requirements, enhanced site-to-site access, and perimeter security minimum security baselines. So hardening guides for perimeter security devices. And we created all these projects under a big one. We told them it would take about a year and probably $1 million to fix. And the executive understands this. He understands what network security is. And he understands what $3 million is in 12 months. And so now we have a project where we took something, nobody cares what Ike v1 is, okay? When you go in and you say, that's owned your domain. He says, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, and so there'll be that difference. And going through this, I think Stephen talked about this, so I was so glad to hear him talk about having a UPS available. So I went to this company late last year, and I'm scanning the network, and I found this. What is that thing? Which does?
Regulate power.
Yeah, this is a little battery like you would sit under your desk, okay? This isn't even, I can't shut off a data center. This thing is inconsequential in the scope of things, right? This piece of gear, if you unplug it, like nothing will happen. It doesn't matter. Huh? Yeah, so there's that, right? The audible irritant. So, you know, but I'm a doofus, so I'm gonna log into it, right? Admin, it was. So I log in and I see it's gonna email the sysadmin whenever it turns on. I think, well, that's cool, because what do you have to do to send an email? Authenticate to the SMTP server, right? So that means that's a domain account, probably. It was. So it's right here, and you see, oh, it's obfuscated with the little dots, right? So I right-clicked it and did inspect element, and it was right there, plain text. Super complex password, by the way. This is what I'm talking about. Nothing in this would have showed up in a scan anywhere, okay? This is fun. By the way, these people manage like superstar celebrity money, Okay, this is a wealth management company. They do about $5 billion a year and have like 40 employees. So this is not inconsequential data at this point, right? And I'm just playing with a battery backup.
And you felt like a rock star.
Huh? I am a rock star, man. Ninja. Thinking, what do you think about that? You know, and they said, we think you're a dork. All right. So I said, so now I have that username and that password, right? And how do I know who that is, though? So I had actually gotten, who's used the responder Python script? Best tool ever. If you don't know what that is, the coolest thing. It takes, how long do people think it takes me to have a username and a password if I'm doing an internal test? Use about 15. It takes me nowadays, I have 1,600 cores in my GPU on this gaming laptop, and I got 5 minutes left? Okay. So it takes me about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll have a username and password. I log into the domain controller here. I run that RPC client's my favorite tool for that. I ask it, who are your domain admins? It said, hey, 3349 is a domain admin. That's that Eaton battery backup. I'm done. I've been at this place, by the way, 2 hours at this point. I have the rest of the week to go. Now, are we done with the penetration test at this point? Not even close. You still have to finish your scans and see all the ports and services that are open, see what other vulnerabilities are present. But, you know, at this point, when I want to show off at the end, I'm done. I've got all their username. I pulled the ntds.dit file off of the domain controller with remote desktop at this point, and which was actually much harder than I thought it would be, taking that thing apart and putting it back together. And those are sweet passwords, you know. And these are, dude, that's long right there, okay? That's long password, but I don't care. I got all the dictionaries, so it works well. But at this point, we go back to that whole executive communication thing. This was a 1-week engagement that was just a quick and dirty pen test. We have a long way to go here. We told these people, they were shocked. They had had a company come in the year before, paid them a ton of money. They said everything was fine. You're PCI compliant, whatever. Which I don't even know what it takes to be PCI compliant, but I know I can do this there. And so we went in and said, you know, you guys need us to come in and do like a full enterprise risk assessment here. We need to look at all your processes. We want to see how you trade money. What is the process if I call in and I'm a super rich guy and I say I need you to move some money around so I can buy my new boat? You know, how does that work? I'm going to audit your process at that point. And I want you to have that ability as well so that you're not always just running a scanner or running a tool or looking at firewall logs. But my main point in coming today was that I do want you to have a skill like that. So if you want to work in this field, there's 3 skills that I usually look for, and I'll ask these guys to jump in as well. I want you to either have been a help desk person, system administrator. I want you to have been a network engineer. Can you program a router and put VLANs in? Do you know what VLANs are and how 802.1q works? Or were you an application developer? You have some proficiency in a coding language. So I don't have that. That's what Steve Haywood is my friend on. You know, I love it. I try to write things in Python, nothing works. Ask Steven, he makes it work in like 2 seconds, and I feel stupid. But that's what friends are for, you know. So, sir. No. I'm happy to have one of the 3 these days. I would say one of the 3. You guys would take one, or do you want combination?
I'm not sure I can make it.
Huh? So this guy, yeah, no, he's awesome. Mark is awesome. But no, you do want somebody to have that skill, right? Some sort of a...
You need to have some combination. Does a degree help? It only demonstrates that you can apply yourself successfully to a goal.
Yeah, so to be on that point, I was thrown out of college as well, so that I'm obviously, once again, not a good team player. No certifications, no degree, which is why I just make friends with, Chris is here now. Make friends with people like Chris and Mark so they can help me out. But yeah, some combination of those things. So I'll stop here, though, and we just have a couple of minutes for questions. If anybody has questions for me. Yes, ma'am. I'm just joking. I love people, and I like to help people and serve people. So what was the end part? How did I do what? Well, I got to the point in my career where I published a vulnerability with a friend a few years ago. And so when ICS CERT publishes something with your name on it, then that brings some people start to know what your name is. My name is actually very weird. So my name isn't John. So people know who, like, Slade kind of sticks out a little bit. And so people started to call and ask to do work with Slade instead of do work with the company. And then I knew that, this company came and said, we want to subcontract you for 6 months. And that was enough for me to do that. So that's how I did that. Anyone else? If you want to hang out afterwards, I have my forensics gear here, and I have my pen testing kit here. If you want to look through some of this stuff like Steven was talking about, feel free, don't steal it. I hate that I have to say that, but like he was talking about a Nexus, you can get a Nexus 7 tablet that runs Kali NetHunter. This one does. You can crack wireless with that, run HID attacks, do whatever you want. It's pretty slick. But you're welcome to come down and look through this stuff. This is kind of stuff I take around. But if you have other questions, please get a hold of me. And thanks for letting me hang out with you today. I had a great time.